said, "Every relation has an expiry date, and you exposed me in front of everyone. Some secrets can't be undone." Ethan once told me this and I laughed off at that time. I didn't believe him. Not until the night he forced me to face a truth so painful. I ended up exposing him in front of everyone we knew. Something I never planned, never wanted, but when you're hurting, you don't always think. You react. And sometimes, you ruin everything in a single moment you can't take back. I was 26 when I met Ethan. He wasn't loud, he wasn't flashy, he wasn't trying to impress me. He was just warm. And after years of dating people who treated love like a performance, his quiet steadiness felt like safety. We met through a mutual friend at a small get-together. Two introverts sitting on opposite sides of a crowded room, both of us exhausted by the noise, the small talk, the forced laughing. He came over, handed me a drink and said, "You look like you want to disappear too." We laughed, and somehow that one sentence made me feel seen. We started talking slowly at first. No fireworks, no dramatic spark, just two people opening up to each other in soft, careful ways. He told me he loved rainy mornings. I told him I collected old poetry books. He said my laugh sounded like relief. I said he felt like home. It wasn't a whirlwind romance. It was two people choosing each other, brick by brick. Within months, we were together officially. Within a year, we knew each other's rhythms, fears, comfort foods, bad habits, and childhood stories. We weren't perfect, but we were close enough that I genuinely thought, this could be my forever. And maybe that's why losing him felt so personal, because we didn't fall apart overnight. We deteriorated quietly, the way real relationships often do. The change didn't happen in one fight or one moment, it was quieter than that. It started when Ethan stopped sharing things with me. Not big things, just the small ones that used to make us feel close. He'd come home from work and say nothing about his day, even when I asked. He'd sit beside me but feel 1,000 miles away. I kept telling myself he was stressed, tired, overwhelmed. I kept giving him grace because that's what you do when you love someone. You wait for them to come back to you, but he didn't. Instead, he told me things like, "You used to be more patient," or "You're more emotional these days," or "Why do you need reassurance for everything?" And each comment felt small on its own, but together they built this invisible wall between us. A wall I couldn't reach through, no matter how hard I tried. We had good days too, which made it confusing. Days when he'd hold me like nothing was wrong. Days when he'd kiss my forehead and say he loved how steady I was. Days when we'd laugh like old times. Those days made me believe we were just in a rough patch, that we would fix it, that love was enough. But then the tension would crawl back in. He started going out without telling me. He muted his phone around me. He stopped saying, "I love you" first, and the worst part was I kept blaming myself. I kept thinking if I were calmer, prettier, smarter, easier to love, maybe he wouldn't be slipping away. There was one night I remember clearly. We were sitting on opposite sides of the couch, watching a movie we weren't really watching, and he looked over and said, "I don't know why you take everything so personally. Not everything is about you." I just stared at him, my chest tight, and whispered, "I'm not trying to make things about me, I'm trying to feel close to you." He sighed like I was exhausting him. That hurt more than anything he said. Still, I stayed. I tried. I softened myself until I barely recognized who I was. Because when you love someone deeply, you think fighting for them is the same as fighting for the relationship. But sometimes, it's just you fighting alone. And even then, even with the distance, even with the silent nights and the empty mornings, I still never imagined how badly things would shatter. It happened on a Friday evening, the kind of night we used to look forward to. One of our closest friends was hosting a small gathering. Nothing dramatic, just wine, music, and the kind of people who knew our relationship from the beginning. People who had watched us fall in love, who believed we were solid, who thought we were that couple that would eventually get married. I didn't want to go. Things between Ethan and me had been tense all week. He kept shutting down every conversation I tried to start, and I kept pretending it didn't hurt. But he insisted. He said, "It'll be good for us, maybe you'll relax a little." That stung. But I went anyway, hoping maybe the night would soften something in us. When we arrived, everyone greeted us with the usual warmth. They hugged Ethan first, they always did, and he slipped easily into conversations while I stayed close, trying to match his energy. But he drifted away fast, leaving me chatting with old friends who kept asking, "How are you two?" In that hopeful tone people get when they want your relationship to still be perfect. I smiled. I lied. I said we were great. But Ethan, he wasn't even trying to pretend. I saw him across the room, laughing with a girl he'd recently gotten close to. Not suspiciously close, at least not at the time, but close enough that it stung. He wasn't touching her. He wasn't flirting. But he was present in a way he hadn't been with me in months. Present, engaged, alive, and that's what hurt the most. Later in the evening, when things calmed, one of our friends started a casual conversation about relationships. Not dramatic, not intentional, just the kind of vulnerable talk that happens when people are comfortable. Someone said, "Every couple goes through ups and downs. That's normal." Before I could respond, Ethan said, "Yeah, well, not every down needs to be broadcasted." Some people overreact to everything. I felt my stomach drop. Everyone looked at him, then at me. He wasn't yelling. He wasn't being cruel, but he was dismissing months of my quiet pain like it was nothing. I didn't say a word. I just stared at him, and he stared back, his expression unreadable. Then he added, almost casually, some people don't understand that not every problem is worth talking about. Some things should stay between two people. That's when something in me cracked. Maybe it was the tone. Maybe it was the way he looked at me like I was the dramatic one. Maybe it was the fact that I'd been drowning in silence for months while he acted like everything was fine. But I snapped, and I mean truly snapped. I heard my own voice before I even realized I was speaking. The words were raw, trembling, louder than I intended. You act like nothing is wrong because you don't have to feel anything. You shut down, you pull away, and then blame me for trying to fix what you're breaking. The room went dead silent. Every head turned toward us. I kept going, I couldn't stop. You say I overreact, but I'm reacting to being ignored for months. I'm reacting to the fact that you don't even try anymore. I'm reacting to losing you while you pretend everything's fine. My eyes were burning. My hands were shaking. And Ethan just stood there, his jaw tight, his face pale. I don't know if it was courage or pain, probably both, but I said the one thing I never planned to say out loud. You keep acting like I'm impossible to love, but the truth is you stopped loving me long before I ever raised my voice. There it was, out in the open, in front of everyone, a moment I couldn't take back. I didn't expose him because I wanted to embarrass him. I exposed him because I was hurt so deeply, I wasn't thinking, and hurt people say things they've spent months swallowing. Ethan looked at me like I'd just burned down our entire history, and in a way I had. We stepped outside because the tension inside felt too heavy, too humiliating. The air was cold, sharp against my skin, like the night itself wanted to keep me awake for what was coming. Ethan closed the door behind us, and for a few seconds we just stood there, two people who used to fit together without trying, now breathing like strangers. He finally spoke first. You really had to do that, in front of everyone? His voice wasn't angry. He was hurt in a way I'd never heard before. A kind of disbelief, like he couldn't understand how I'd broken the rules we'd lived by for years, the rule of keeping our business private, even when it cracked us open. I swallowed hard. I didn't plan it, I swear, I just broke. He shook his head. Our relationship, the ups, the downs, the messy parts, those were ours. You can't undo that for the world now. Something inside me twisted. Because he was right, and also he was wrong. I stepped closer, my voice trembling. Ethan, I did everything I could to protect what we had. I protected it even from myself. I kept quiet for months while you checked out. I let myself shrink just to keep the peace. I tried so hard not to lose you that I lost parts of me instead. His jaw tightened. So your solution was to humiliate me? No, I whispered. My solution was to talk to you, but you stopped talking back. He exhaled slowly, looking away. I didn't stop talking. I just didn't want every tiny thing to turn into a crisis. I felt my chest heat with familiar frustration. It's only a crisis when you ignore everything until it explodes. He didn't respond. He just rubbed his hand over his face like my words were too heavy to hold. Then he said something that stunned me. I didn't stop loving you. I just didn't know how to love you anymore. My heart cracked, quietly, the kind of hurt that doesn't make a sound. Why didn't you tell me that? I whispered. Because, he said, voice breaking a little, I didn't want to admit it to myself. And I didn't want to lose you. We both stood there, letting that truth hang in the air. Two people who tried. Two people who failed in different ways. Two people who were still hurting each other even in their honesty. After a long moment he said, "You're right about one thing, love fades when you stop paying attention to it." I wiped my face. So what does that mean for us? He looked straight at me, and his voice was steady, painfully steady. It means we reached our expiry date, we just didn't want to admit it. My breath caught. Is that really what you want? No, he said softly. It's what already happened. There's a special kind of heartbreak that comes when someone tells you the truth you already sensed but didn't want to face. It hits harder than betrayal, harder than anger, because it confirms something you kept praying wasn't real. I nodded slowly, even though my whole body felt like it was crumbling. So this is it. He didn't answer. But his silence said everything. We walked back inside separately. People avoided looking at us, pretending they hadn't heard every painful word. And by the time I left that night, something inside me had shifted. Not anger, not regret. Just a quiet, heavy acceptance. Some relationships don't end with cheating or screaming or dramatic exits. Some end with two people standing in the cold, admitting the truth neither wanted to say out loud. Every love has an expiry date. Ours just arrived sooner than I ever imagined. The days after that night felt strangely quiet, not dramatic, not messy, just quiet. The kind of quiet that comes when something heavy finally stops hanging over your head. We didn't block each other. We didn't text either. We just drifted, the way people do when a chapter has already closed, even if they're still standing in the doorway. I kept replaying his words in my head, it already happened. And the more I thought about it, the more I realized he wasn't being cold, he was being honest, painfully honest. Love doesn't vanish in one moment. It fades in the missed conversations, the swallowed thoughts, the nights you sleep back to back because you don't know how to turn toward each other anymore. I wasn't innocent. I held things in too long. I expected him to read my silence like I could read his. And when I finally snapped, it wasn't about humiliating him. It was about finally collapsing under the weight of everything unsaid. A week later, he sent one message. A simple one. I hope you're okay. No emoji, no question mark, just that. And I stared at it for a long time before typing back, I will be, I hope you will too. We didn't talk again after that. Not because of anger, but because closure sometimes comes in the form of acceptance, not conversation. And the truth is, some relationships don't need a reunion. They need a respectful ending. Months later, I ran into a mutual friend who said Ethan had moved to a quieter place out of the city. He was doing better, healing in his own way, and I was too. Not by forgetting him, but by remembering that not every love story is meant to last. Some are meant to teach you who you are, what you need, and what you can't ignore anymore. Even now, I don't hate him. I don't hate us. We were two people who tried, just not in the same direction at the same time. And maybe that's enough to understand why something beautiful didn't survive. Not every ending is a failure. Some are just the natural end of a story that ran its course. If you've ever felt a relationship fade, not explode, you're not alone. Some secrets can be undone, some wounds can heal, but some endings, they just are. If this story spoke to you, tell me in the comments. And if you want more stories like this, remember to subscribe.